through contact dermatitis in a kind of a different way. I'm really excited about this, and there's one slide coming up that I'm a little embarrassed about that we'll talk about further, all right? So my disclosure is great. So allergens of the year, that's what we're gonna do, is we're gonna go through the allergens of the year. So starting in Y2K, which by the way, that to me is when the government lost all credibility. I don't know how many of you remember Y2K, like the whole world was gonna shut down, like literally nothing happened, nothing, right? So, but what did happen in Y2K was the American Contact Dermatitis Society introduced the allergen of the year, and there's three things that get something to be an allergen of the year.
Matt, you missed one thing. I got married on Y2K.
All right, so new and important, so either a new allergen or something new about an old allergen, an allergen that we're underappreciating, that sort of we think people are missing frequently, or an allergen that is generating more concern than it really warrants. So there have been a few non-allergens of the year where the whole point has been, don't worry about this one. All right, so now that we've had 20 years of them though, it can be kind of fun to go back through them because this really is hitting the highest yield allergens, the things that are gonna be most likely to be issues in your practice, right? So starting with the year 2000, the first allergen of the year were dispersed blue dyes. Now there are, in general, two different ways you can be allergic to clothing, right? So there are three types of reactions to clothing. Reaction number one is irritant contact dermatitis, and that is because between 2 and 5% of the laundry detergent that you put into the washing machine is residual in the clothes. And so then whenever they get a little bit sweaty, it can release that laundry detergent back under the skin and they get irritant dermatitis. That is very specific to kind of the more aggressive laundry detergent. So I hear that all the time with Tide. Whenever people would, I switched to Tide and I was allergic, you weren't allergic to it, it was irritation. The easiest way to deal with that, you either do a double rinse every time, or you have people switch to the laundry detergent, the brand All Free Clear, right? Because the brand All Free Clear, they didn't just take the fragrance out, which is totally meaningless, that's pure marketing. They actually changed the surfactants in there so that the 2 to 5% that's residual in the clothes, when it gets activated, is not gonna cause an irritant dermatitis. You can think of it as the Dove bar of laundry detergent, all right? Now, so that's one way you can be allergic to, you can have a reaction to clothes. The two other ways is you can have a reaction to the dyes in clothing. That happens with synthetic fabrics. All right, so polyester being number one, but also things like spandex, acrylates, nylon, anything that is a synthetic fiber can release dyes onto the skin, and that's what happens with dispersed blue dyes. So the other type of clothing dermatitis, which we're also gonna talk about, is from cotton clothes. And that's actually a lot more common than is from synthetic clothes and dyes. And it's because cotton gets treated to make it wrinkle, shrink, and stain resistant. And those fabric treatments, as they leave a residue, right, because it has to stay there to maintain its effect, that slowly degrades and releases formaldehyde onto your skin. And that looks different. We'll talk about what it looks like as well, and we'll talk about what to do for all of these. So dispersed blue dyes, right? There are over 1,200 different specific dyes in the textile industry, different dyes for different fabrics. That's why polyester, acetate, and nylon are the big problems with allergy to dyes. These are three examples, and this is the slide that I'm embarrassed about because I put this lecture together before, so the one on the, so first this guy, it was his sleep mask. So whenever he would wear his sleep mask, he would get swelling and itching around his eyes, and because it would be delayed by a couple of days like allergic contact dermatitis is, so he would wear his sleep mask on Monday, and then on Wednesday his eyes would get itchy, so he never put it together, right? But we figured out it was the dye in his sleep mask. This guy was those kind of shiny liners for guys and women with blazers. They'll often have like that liner on the upper back part. Well, he was a school principal. He would wear his suit to school board meetings, sit there, be sweaty and stressed, and then the next day break out in his rash. He thought he was allergic to the stress. It was actually the liner in his sport coat. And right, you see that kind of nice cutoff along the back where there's kind of a relatively sharp line. And then this one, black yoga pants. This is the woman that I used in my lecture earlier today, who it turned out she was not allergic to the black yoga pants. She had atopic dermatitis that was being exacerbated by sweat from her sitting. And it is just such a good, just remember that for all of us up here, when you see us talk about a case, I promise you 99% of the time it was not that the patient walked in and we were like, oh, that is progressive macular hypomellanosis and you were going to respond to topical benzoyl peroxide. No, we looked at him the first time, we're like, I think maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's tinea versicolor, but it's not, oh, it didn't get better, huh? And then, oh, it didn't get, and then, oh, we finally figured it out, and then we put together 2 nice slides that make us look like a genius and be like, obviously, this was progressive macular hypomelanism. But so it's working through these cases, right? That's what makes you an expert, is figuring them out as you go, right? So although she had a strong positive patch test at dispersed dyes, was wearing yoga pants that were made out of polyester and spandex, it was not what was actually causing her dermatitis. All right, so the dispersed dye pearls, it's typically an acute dermatitis. So it will be something that there's only 1 or 2 items of clothing that are triggering it. Whenever they get it, it'll be a nice distribution that correlates exactly with the item of clothing that was triggering it. So it often, once you kind of get this idea, or you get a patch test where it's, on the true test or comprehensive patch testing, you don't have to tell people only wear white. Right? You can tell people, number one, you avoid the types of fabrics, so you stick to cotton, linen, bamboo, things like that. So natural fabrics, those kinds of things, or synthetic fabrics that are very light colored, but you can reasonably tell people, hey, we know now that it's the dye in your clothing, it's probably gonna show up a day or 2 after you wear it, so the next time you get this, think about what you wore in the last 2 days and see what correlates with where you're getting it. And it's usually like 1 item in their wardrobe that is what they're allergic to. All right, next one, gold. So gold is on the true test. Up to 10% of women will test positive to gold. And this is one of the ones, if you get a positive patch test to gold, it's likely gonna persist for 3 months, 6 months, even a year. We're not sure why that happens with gold and not with any other allergens. Maybe that the gold gets deposited in the skin and just is kind of trapped there, almost like a tattoo reaction. But it often persists that long. That's relatively expected. It will eventually go away. Most women, so 9 out of 10 women or men who test positive to gold, it's not causing any problems. And the reason is that gold is a very inert substance, right? So it doesn't, unlike say the nickel in cheap earrings, it doesn't easily get dissolved onto your skin, right? So it just sits there in the item of jewelry. When it is relevant, so it's typically their makeup interacting with the gold, and it's because titanium dioxide, which is in almost all foundations, acts almost like a sandblasting of the gold. And so it's typically a gold ring, and it's they touch their face, transfer some titanium dioxide here, touch their face again later in the day. Now their makeup is contaminated with the gold that got kind of ground off of this, and so they end up getting a facial dermatitis. So the only time I care about gold, not the only time, but the vast majority of the time when I will care about gold is if it's a woman with a facial dermatitis, and I'll show you a picture of what that looks like. Also, oral lichenoid reactions in people with gold crowns. It'll be localized to where the crown is. So, right, the first one here, you see the little Wickham stria just above the gold crown. That's an oral lichenoid reaction from a gold crown. I have never had this cause burning mouth syndrome or their whole mouth has got an eruption that's burning and eroding. It's typically just around the tooth. This is what the gold ring interacting with foundation looks like. Now you might say, well then why doesn't she have it over her whole face? Because whenever you look at how much makeup or moisturizer or anything, you put the most on here, you put less on out here. And so she just wasn't putting as much foundation out on this part of her face. But that central facial dermatitis, whenever I see a positive reaction to gold, that's when it's most commonly relevant. This is the one case I have ever had where gold jewelry touching somebody's skin actually caused it directly, and just those little bumps by her earring there. And I often wonder about, because a lot of people, if you start checking, have little bumps right there behind their ear. I often think that it's kind of an acne manifestation, but in this woman, it ended up being a manifestation from her gold jewelry. Pearls here. Again, 90% of reactions at least are not clinically relevant. Suspected as relevant if it's a central face dermatitis in women, if it's next to a gold crown, or if it correlates directly with where something gold touches their skin. The biggest question about the face one is they don't get a rash under the ring. I still don't have a good answer for why they don't get a rash under the ring, except that I guess I assume that the titanium dioxide's getting on like the top of the ring, or I guess not like this part of the ring on the outer surface, and so it's not getting down around into their finger where it can cause it is all I can think of. It may take many months, so whenever I tell this person, hey, it's the gold interacting with your makeup, first thing, you can either stop wearing gold or stop wearing makeup. So first I will tell you, everybody chooses to stop wearing the gold. Nobody says, I just won't wear makeup for the next 6 months, right? So they stop wearing the gold, but I tell them 3 to 6 months. Now, assuming that the rash goes away, I then tell them, okay, go ahead, start wearing gold again, because if it comes back, as soon as it comes back, they stop wearing the gold again. But I want to confirm that the gold is definitely it, because this is a very expensive treatment paradigm. Because what they're going to have to do is switch from, they can't wear gold anymore, they need to switch to platinum, right? And so platinum, oh my God, right? So now you're looking at a much more expensive metal whenever you haven't switched to platinum, right? You could also switch to silver or really any other metal that you wanted, but I really want to confirm that it's the gold before they go changing things. And rings are usually the only thing they need to change. A lot of these women still can wear gold necklaces, gold earrings. It really is rings that are the big thing from touching your face. But once concerned, they can decide once we've confirmed it, they can either change or not. 2002, non-allergen of the year, right? This is thimerosal, the North American Contact Dermatitis Group. So we're testing 90 allergens in everybody. Most patients that I see, I'm testing 120 allergens. So it's not like we have to be, we don't want to add one more allergen. Thimerosal is so irrelevant, we haven't tested it in 20 years. So we don't test the thimerosal anymore, but it's still on the true test. The main thing you need to know, there's literally nothing you need to do whenever somebody is allergic to thimerosal. It's just not in anything. The only thing that I've been able to find it in is neosynephrine nasal spray. So I suppose if you had somebody who was allergic to thimerosal and had chronic sinusitis, you might ask to use neosynephrine, but that's literally the only thing that we've seen it in. It is on the true test. The other thing is flu vaccines and tetanus vaccines. Some of them do have thimerosal. It is never a reason to avoid a vaccine. So at worst, you're going to get a little bit of at worst, you're going to get a short-lasting exanthematous drug rash. Most commonly, you're not going to get any kind of a problem. It's just going to make the vaccine work even better by acting as an adjuvant. Most commonly, you just get a little bit of pain. It's a little sore for a week or so, but it's never a reason to avoid a vaccine. If you have, though, a patient who's like worked up about this, of, oh my God, did you write a letter for me for work because we have to get the flu vaccine and I can't get it because of that, you can address that by going to this website, which has a list of all the excipients and vaccines in the United States. This is in the handouts, and so you can find which flu vaccine doesn't have thimerosal in it by using this. All right, so bacitracin, very common allergen, co-reacts with neomycin. The reason that it was named an allergen of the year was because it didn't used to be on the true test, and we wanted people to know if you get a positive reaction to neomycin, there's a 50% chance they're also allergic to bacitracin, because what we were seeing were people were getting a positive patch test to neomycin, being told it was okay to use polysporin or bacitracin, and then they were continuing to have a dermatitis. So we wanted people to know that it so frequently co-reacted with neomycin. This case on the left here, this was a girl while she was down in Florida, got bit by fire ants, started putting polysporin on her fire ant bites. They kept getting worse and worse. She thought they were infected, was putting more on, so it kept spreading. Eventually, she got an id reaction, right? And an id reaction you think of as being there is such an intense local inflammatory process that enough cytokine is spilling into your blood that now it causes you to have a generalized eczematous reaction. Right? So most commonly it happens with stuff on the lower legs, and that's exactly what happened in her. And this is what it typically always looks like, this it's called a papulovesicular reaction, where you're looking at them and they're like they're little bumps, and you're like, are those little vesicles? Like they look kind of like vesicles, but they're not quite. So we call them a papulovesicular eruption. And then this individual, bacitracin and neomycin retained, it actually wasn't his shoes, it was his slippers. And it's one of the things that is very common for me with foot dermatitis. So first, bacitracin, generally easy to avoid, right? It's never gonna be unsuspectedly in a product, right? Anything that has bacitracin is gonna be a first aid antibacterial ointment. Povidone iodine cream is my favorite replacement, so I like this much better than mupirocin. Number one, I don't have to write prescriptions or refill it. Number two, there's less resistance. And number three, it's broader spectrum. So right, mupirocin is very specific to staph. Povidone iodine is very broad spectrum. And so this is my favorite replacement for any kind of a topical antibacterial. Retained allergens in shoes and gloves. Always remember, especially shoes, are very unique because you never wash them, right? So if you put Neosporin on your feet and then you put your shoes on, that shoe permanently has neomycin and bacitracin in it. So somebody might go 6 months, you test them, oh, your patch is positive neomycin, bacitracin, do you use that at all? And they say, oh no, I haven't, I tried it when my foot first broke out, but I haven't used it again in the last 6 months. Okay, so you need to stop wearing all of your shoes. So I'll tell people, get one pair of shoes, go buy one new pair of shoes or 2 new pairs if you need them. Don't worry about throwing away all your other shoes yet, because we don't know for sure, but just only wear the new shoes. You can't wear any of your old shoes for at least 6 weeks or 2 months. If your feet clear up, then we know, yep, it was residual in your shoes. Pick one pair at a time to start wearing again. Wear them for maybe a week. If you don't break out, that pair's okay. Go on to the next pair. So you go through it and try them one at a time. 2004 allergen of the year, cocamidopropylbetaine. So one of my favorite allergens to say. One of the big things with it, it doesn't cross-react with coconut. So if you get somebody allergic to cocamidopropylbetaine, say, oh my God, do I have to avoid coconut and things with coconut in them? Do I have to avoid coconut? No. The coconut is not the part of it that they're allergic to. The betaine is the part that they're allergic to. So it can be in anything that foams. Shampoos are by far the #1 cause of allergic contact dermatitis from it, but hand soaps as well, and so particularly liquid products. So shampoos, hand soaps, rare for it to be in a bar soap, except for Dove. It is in Dove unscented sensitive skin bar. So whenever I get somebody allergic to cocamidopropylbetaine, I always have them go to the Vanacream bar. I will tell you, I really like Vanacream makes a Vanacream Z bar that has 2% zinc pyrithione in it. You can get it on Amazon, it's $10. I really like that for facial dermatoses. I think that malassezia plays a bigger role in facial stuff than we give it credit for. So that's just a product that I really like in general that's made me think of. So shampoo, soap, toothpaste it can be in, and I've seen people with lip dermatitis related to cocamidopropylbetaine in their toothpaste. I've never seen a problem from a contact lens solution or a makeup remover, but those are reported in the literature. It's less irritating and drying than odor surfactants, but it causes contact dermatitis. So it doesn't cause irritant contact dermatitis or drying, but it does cause allergic contact dermatitis in rare cases. And most commonly, eyelid dermatitis and hand dermatitis. We're going to look at a few cases of it. So first woman here, this was cocamidopropylbetaine in a private label cleanser that her dermatologist had sold her, right? And so it's one thing if you sell products in your office, either be really careful about knowing which things have allergens in them, or be ready to refund somebody their money, because she was obviously pretty upset with her dermatologist. It's not like they did something wrong, right? Because they didn't know she was allergic to cocamidopropylbetaine, but she was pretty upset about having spent $50 on a high-end cleanser, and then it turns out she's allergic to it. This woman, it was the cocamidopropylbetaine in the Dove bar that I had told her to use. She was not quite as mad at me because the Dove bar cost $1.34, right? So she didn't feel like she had wasted as much money. This was cocamidopropylbetaine in hand soap in somebody who worked in healthcare. So always remember, when you see people with dermatitis on the hands in healthcare, we like to jump to thinking it's the gloves. It can be the stuff that they're washing their hands with. Because then whenever you put the glove, you're right, you wash your hands, you rinse them, but there's a little bit of residue, then you put the gloves on that magnifies the effect of that residue. And so this person, it was cocamidopropylbetaine in their hand soap, but the effect was being magnified by the rubber gloves. So the pearls of cocamidopropylbetaine, they probably need to avoid other betaine. So there's cocamidopropylbetaine cocamidopropylbetaine, almond-dipropyl, I can't say, oh my God, I can't say it. Good Lord, I think I'm getting old. There's soyimidopropylbetaine, I can still say that one. So there's lots of different betaines. There are also dimethylamines, which are typically in conditioners. So they need to avoid all betaines and all dimethylamines. Doesn't indicate allergy to coconut, which I'd already mentioned. 2005 allergen of the year, steroids. So these are now on the true test, so you're going to sometimes get positives here. Historically, well, we'll get to that in a second. So you suspect this if the dermatitis doesn't get better as expected, if the dermatitis spreads, so they have a dermatitis on their antecubital fossa, you give them a steroid to use, they come back next time, and now it's spread significantly, whereas they had it for several months and it hadn't been spreading. That would make you think about, could this be steroid allergy? Or if they improve when using it, but then whenever they stop, it doesn't just come back, it comes back a lot worse than it was before they started using it. And that's because the pharmacologic effect of the steroid wears off a lot faster than the allergy does. So usually it'll still work. They'll put it on. The first couple of days, they just get better because the contact dermatitis takes 3 days to a week to really come out. So they're like, well, when I started using this cream, I got better, so I must not be allergic to it. That's really because of the difference in how fast the steroid works versus how fast the contact dermatitis will show up. And then the morphology of the dermatitis changes, but this is hard to recognize clinically. The issue here, and you've heard me mention a couple of times, desoxymetazone and dexamethasone. So the maximum, it's up to 10% of people allergic to tixocordyl pivalate. Now there's 3 steroid markers on the true test. The only one you even have to vaguely worry about prednisone with is tixocordyl pivalate. You don't have to worry about it with budesonide allergy, or I think it's hydrocortisone 17-butyrate is the other one on the true test. You don't have to worry about prednisone allergy with those, only with tixocordyl pivalate. So the first guy here was hydrocortisone allergy, was just using over the counter. And right, kind of your clue here is that relatively sharp cutoff where that's where his t-shirt would start, so he wouldn't put it on any further than that. This guy was an exanthematous drug rash from prednisone. So he had an initial rash, got put on prednisone. He was clear at 40. Whenever we tapered down to 20, he was still okay. When we went from 20 to 10, he would break out in this. And we actually went through several cycles before it dawned on me, oh my God, he's allergic to the prednisone. It's just the prednisone is treating the allergic reaction to itself at 40 and 20. At 10, there wasn't enough prednisone to treat the allergic reaction anymore, so it started to show up. And then this last one was somebody allergic to mometasone, and you could tell she's being nice and compliant because she's got blanching right around the lesions, right? So that's that vasoconstrictive effect of steroids, but we switched her from the mometasone to desoxymetazone and this cleared. So your steroid allergy, Pearls, it's often a question people like to ask on exams or in like CME questions about steroid classification system. There's the class A's were the hydrocortisone types, the B's were the triamcinolone types, the C's were desoxymetazone and clocortilone, and then the D's were the clobetasol type. Baloney. So it's very unpredictable clinically. If you get somebody who reacts to any steroid on the true test, you should really limit yourself to using either, if you're going to use a steroid, it should be either desoxymetazone or clocortilone. Those are the 2 steroids that really nobody is allergic to. So if you suspect allergy, desoxymetazone ointment, because there are no allergens in the ointment, desoxymetazone cream does have lanolin in it. Clocortilone has parabens in it, so there is something in that vehicle you can be allergic to. But desoxymetazone ointment, there's nothing in the vehicle, and nobody is allergic to the desoxymetazone itself. You can use tacrolimus ointment, obviously not a steroid, but there's no known thing as allergy to tacrolimus, or if there is, it is so vanishingly rare. But the vehicle also doesn't have any allergens in it, right? So pimecrolimus has propylene glycol in it, so you can be allergic to pimecrolimus. And then if you really want to be careful, usually I only really go to the dexamethasone. You only really need to go to it if you give them prednisone and you think they end up having a drug rash from it. Because the prednisone will still work just as well. It's not dangerous. There's no possibility of them getting, Stevens-Johnson or urticaria, something like that. It is only an exanthematous drug reaction. So it's not a situation where I'm like, oh, if you get somebody allergic to any of the steroid markers on true test, you should only use dexamethasone. But you keep in the back of your mind, if they do seem like they break out in a drug rash with prednisone, that is probably the reason. Next allergen of the year, 2006, paraphenylene-diamine, right? So we're all very comfortable with what paraphenylene-diamine, it's the active ingredient in hair dyes. It's probably the most potent allergen in any personal care product. Generally easy to diagnose because there's a clear relationship. Oh, every 6 weeks I dye my hair, or get my hair dyed. When that happens, my scalp gets super itchy the day after and stays that way for 3 or 4 days. That's typically the story. It's pretty obvious that it's the paraphenylene-diamine. Where it can be harder is with men. Because number one, a lot of the men's products are shampoos, so they're using them on a regular basis. It might rinse down over their face. They might get more of a rash on their face than on their scalp. The other place is beard dye. So men who are dyeing their beard are often dyeing it every 1 to 2 weeks rather than every 6 to 8 weeks like women will dye their hair. And so the last episode hasn't gone away before the next episode starts. So men's products tend to be harder to figure out with paraphenylene-diamine. And after the dye has set, so about 24 hours after they have dyed their hair, it's no longer allergenic. So meaning if they have long hair and they're willing to put up with their head getting itchy, they should keep it in a ponytail for about 24 hours, just to mainly keep it off your skin. After 24 hours, it's not going to cause a rash on your back from the residual paraphenylene-diamine, because the paraphenylene-diamine has all been cured at that point. Can spread to the face, especially if they're rinsing it out at home, or if it's men using the shampoos. Right, so here, and this is the reason why I mainly have picked 2 pictures of men here, because women have already figured it out before they get to me, right? So men haven't figured it out. So this guy was PPD applied to his hair. This guy was PPD in his shampoo, and in this woman, she was a hairdresser. And with hairdressers, it's usually the worst on their left hand on these 2 fingers. And it's because, right, they pull your hair through those 2 fingers. This hand is holding the scissors. So you're getting much less paraphenylene dye. You're touching the hair much less with this hand. You're touching it most between these 2 fingers, right? Now, what you do with hairdressers who are paraphenylene-diamine allergic, right? So what are the pearls here? So first, whenever you talk about, if you just say to somebody you need to get PPD-free hair dye. So if you go online and search for PPD hair dye, there are several companies. Can never remember the one that's the most common. I always want to call it Ashley Madison, but it is not Ashley Madison. It's Ashley Madison, and then I think about the pharmacy, Dwayne Reed. It's Ashley Reed. I think that's it. Ashley Reed? What? Madison Reed. That's it. It's Madison Reed is the popular hair dye that is PPD free, but it has this PTDS to replace the PPD. Half of people who are allergic to PPD are also allergic to PTDS. So in the North American group, we test PTDS in everyone, so I can tell them, hey, you're okay to switch to Madison Reed. I probably would get in trouble if I said you ought to switch to Ashley Madison. That would not lead to a lot of return patients. But so you can switch to Madison Reed, and you should be okay. But if you're not testing PTDS, para-toluene diamine sulfate, it's probably not a good idea to tell them to switch to Madison Reed. All right, so not safe to recommend PPD unless you're also PPD-free dye, unless you're also testing PTDS. Henna products, not good at covering gray. Nobody's going to be satisfied with a henna product. There's another line called Goldwell Illumin. It is mainly like red and blue and purple and orange and green, not hazel and chestnut and brown and black. So it's not a reasonable option either. However, there is a hair dye out there. It's called Wella Colistin Perfect with ME. They can get this on Amazon. Every hair salon in the country can get this. And what they did, they took the paraphenylene-diamine molecule, they figured out how it fits into the antigen binding groove, and they put a little methoxymethyl spike on there. So now the paraphenylene-diamine isn't recognized by your immune system, but it still works just like it does in everybody else. So right, you're doing your skin check, your hand on the doorknob. Oh, and hey, by the way, every time I dye my hair, my head gets itchy for 2 weeks. I just want to rip my scalp off, and I wish I was dead when I'm so itchy, but I'm not going to stop dyeing my hair. What dye should I switch to? Historically, it was like, you're just going to have to live with it. The answer now is this Wella Colistin Perfect with ME. All right, so it's very rare for somebody to have a problem with it, and if they do, it'll be much less intense than the allergic contact dermatitis they get from regular PPD-containing dye. All right, 2007 allergen of the year, fragrance. One of the most difficult allergens to deal with for 2 reasons. number one, almost everything has fragrance in it, right? So now you can find fragrance-free just about everything, except shampoo is really hard. So if you go to Target or Walmart or CVS or Walgreens or your salon or wherever, and you look for fragrance-free shampoo and conditioner, almost impossible to find. The only products that are fragrance-free in shampoo and conditioner are special low allergenicity products, right? So there's a brand out there called Frag Free. There's a brand out there called Know Nothing. They still have other allergens in them other than fragrance. So well, we'll talk about which shampoos you should go to. But the other thing is even things that say fragrance-free may have fragrance in them. Because the rule is if you are putting it in, so benzyl alcohol is a good example. It has a nice fragrance to it. People are commonly allergic to it, but it also counts as a preservative. So if I'm a company, I could put benzyl alcohol in my product and say, I'm using it as a preservative, there are no added fragrances, therefore we are fragrance-free. Well, your immune system doesn't care why it's in there. Your immune system just cares if it's in there or not. So you can't, definitely fragrance-free is much less likely to be a problem than something that doesn't say fragrance-free, but you can't rely on it to tell you 100% that product is fragrance-free. And then last, a lot of patients, so everybody who's allergic to fragrance is not allergic to all of them. So you'll be saying, oh, you're allergic to fragrances, and you need to change your shampoo, your conditioner, all of your stuff. And they'll say, but I use perfume and I spray it right here twice a day and I have no rash there, right? So how can you tell me I'm allergic to fragrances? Or I'm using this Bath & Body Works strawberry essence, coconut, mango, peppermint lotion, and I'm putting it on my hands 3 times a day and I have no rash on my hands, so how can you tell me I'm allergic to fragrance? It's because you're not allergic to all fragrances, you're just allergic to some of them. And that product happens to not have one of the ones you're allergic to, but if we want to get your rash better, we need to just have you avoid all fragrances. Once you're better, then you can start reintroducing stuff if you really want to. But if you start getting a rash again, you got to avoid all fragrances again. But it just makes it hard to convince them that fragrance really is the thing. Right? So I always start this conversation by saying, you're allergic to fragrance, but not all fragrances. You're especially not, because it's really rare that I see somebody allergic to perfume, right? And that's because they don't come to see me because they figured it out. Oh, I'm getting a rash right here and here where I sprayed my perfume. But so I always start by saying, not the kind of fragrances that are in colognes and perfumes, but the kind of fragrances that are added to things like shampoos and moisturizers. All right, so really indicating that to people. And then the fragrances in use are always changing. So on the True Test, you've got Fragrance Mix 1 and Balsam of Peru. They are not very relevant anymore. So if you test somebody and you're really suspecting fragrance, allergy, or allergic contact dermatitis, and the True Test is negative, it is still very possible that they are fragrance allergic. And so especially with facial dermatitis, it is always reasonable. So if you're doing true testing and somebody's got a facial dermatitis, it is very reasonable to just say, we're not even going to bother to true test you. You just need to go on a very low allergenicity regimen. And so that's going to be things like you should only use products from Vanicream, Free and Clear, and CeraVe, all 3 of which are extremely low allergenicity potential, and you're going to use a makeup brand. It's really rare that I see allergic contact dermatitis from makeup, like really rare. I see a lot of irritant contact dermatitis from makeup, but all that they really need to do then is get new makeup because it's irritating because it's been oxidized. But really rare that I have to have people change their makeup. And makeup's usually obvious because you're going to get a rash exactly where you put it on. Right? So if you're allergic to your foundation, you're going to get a rash typically that kind of ends right here at the jawline. So makeup is the least likely thing to be an issue for me with fragrance, but it's shampoo, conditioner, cleansers, moisturizers, things like that. You do also need to think about fabric softener. So now, fragrance in laundry detergent, not a problem because there's not enough left, but from your dryer sheets and your fabric softeners, they do leave enough residual fragrance that somebody can get a facial dermatitis from their pillowcase, right? So you do need to think about laundry products a little bit. These were 3 really nice cases of fragrance allergy. So the first one here, you see that kind of square area? That's because she was getting it from her significant other's cologne. Now, I just told you it's really rare that it comes from perfumes or colognes, but it's not 0. I've had a couple of people over the years, but she didn't figure it out because she didn't put together that it was coming from whenever they would go dancing and she would rest her chin on his shoulder. So here's his shoulder, she's resting her chin on it, well, his shoulder ends right there. So that's why she's got it right here, but not coming over to here. This was a rinse-off pattern from shampoo, and then this was fragrance in antiperspirant. So my favorite antiperspirant for people, so if they don't need an antiperspirant, if they just need a deodorant, you can typically get away with using something like clindamycin, clindamycin lotion or something like that, and that really helps to prevent odor. The other thing that you can use, chlorhexidine, well, chlorhexidine soaps generally have fragrance in them, so you don't want to do that. It's usually clindamycin that I go to in that situation. If they need an antiperspirant, Certain Dry does not have any fragrance in it. So the original Certain Dry roll-on, they typically only need to use it about 2 or 3 times a week because it's irritating. So if you use Certain Dry, the aluminum chloride in there is an irritant. I'll have people put it on at night before they go to bed. As soon as it dries, I'll have them put some Desonide on over it, and I'll have them do that 2 days a week. They typically don't get, they get good moisture control without getting irritant dermatitis. Right? If I just have them use the Certain Dry, they'll often get irritant dermatitis from it, even just using it once or twice. So fragrance pearls, not a whole lot, right? So just that you don't rely on the true test to rule out fragrance. And I kind of gave you the, what are the brands that I empirically go to? Again, Vanicream, CeraVe, and then there's one other line that's really good. If you want somebody who wants like high-end frou-frou products, it's called VMV. The letter V, the letter M, the letter V. The shampoo and conditioner are like $40 a bottle, which like to me as a guy, I'm like, that's a lifetime supply of shampoo, right? It's $3 for, I get the bottle that's that big for $3. That's less than a lot of, the girls here all know this, that's less than a lot of you are paying for your shampoo and conditioner at your salon. People really like those products, and they make a full line, moisturizers, soaps, everything, and it's a really nice line, and it's completely non-allergenic. That's a really easy go-to for your higher-end patients. Kind of for what I would call the normal people, Vanicream and CeraVe are probably my 2 favorite product lines in terms of being low allergenicity. But those are the other fragrances that you would need to test to if you really want to rule out fragrance allergy. 2008 allergen of the year, nickel. Right, so unclear if nickel in prosthetic joints, right? That comes up all the time for, oh my gosh, my knee. I got my knee done and it still hurts, and my orthopedic surgeon said that he's perfect and never had a knee not work in his whole life, so I must be allergic. No, you're not allergic to the nickel, right? I will still test them just because it's easier to test them than it is to not test them, right? To try and explain why I'm not. But I always give people the same advice. So if they come in with, oh, I had my knee done, it was a year ago, it's still painful, they don't know why, whether they test positive to nickel or not, if they take that joint out and replace it with a titanium one, there's about an 80% chance they'll get better, right? So whether they tested positive to nickel or not, I'm giving them the same advice, but they believe it more after I've tested them, right? Whether they were positive or negative. Again, and then the next thing, many individuals with nickel allergy don't react to jewelry. So I'll get a positive patch test to nickel, and then I'll say, oh, do you have problems with it? No, I've never had a problem with an earring in my life. And are you wearing? No, these were like $3. I bought them at the fair, right? So it's releasing tons of nickel. The reason is that skin surface chemistry. So your skin has to actually dissolve some of the nickel out of the jewelry, and depending on the salt content of your skin, the pH of your sweat, some people's skin surface chemistry causes nickel to be released. Other people's skin surface chemistry doesn't cause nickel to be released. So that's the answer for whenever you look at somebody who's a positive patch test to nickel, but has never gotten a problem from nickel. So in little kids, it's snaps on their jeans. In adults, it's belt buckles. All right, so whenever you get that infraumbilical dermatitis, and you can get an id reaction from it, and then dietary nickel, hugely under-recognized problem. So if you patch test somebody and they're positive to nickel, if it's just a non-specific widespread rash, it is very reasonable to tell them to follow a low nickel diet for 2 months. And I'm going to show you exactly where to get the information on low nickel diet. All right, so here are some examples. So this guy, you actually see the little square of where his belt buckle was being held against his skin, but you often get this id reaction that's especially localized. This next guy was dietary nickel, itchy papules on the extensor elbows, is dietary nickel until proven otherwise. And then this girl, it was her elbows, so dyshidrosis can be related to dietary nickel. So again, if you patch test somebody and they're positive to nickel and they have dyshidrosis, Think about a low nickel diet. She started eating soybeans every night, and edamame is one of the highest sources of nickel that there is. So we had her stop eating the edamame every night, and she cleared right up. And then this is what a dimethylglyoxime test looks like. So if you go online, if you have a patient go online and Google nickel spot test, it's this dimethylglyoxime. It's a little bottle. They put a drop on a Q-tip. You rub it on the metal item. If it turns pink like that one did, it releases nickel. If it doesn't turn pink, it is safe. And so like for the belt buckle thing, because some people they're into belts and they're into belt buckles, and you can't be like, stop wearing belts, or if you go online and look for nickel-free belt buckles, you can find plenty of them. They're like, but I really like my belt buckles, and I don't want, okay, get a dimethylglyoxime and you can test them and see which ones are okay for you to wear and which ones are not. Nickel pearls, dimethylglyoxime test is helpful. The low nickel diet, here is the website. The slides are up there to be downloaded, so don't worry about writing it down or something. But that actually gives a really fantastic patient education about systemic nickel dermatitis and about how to avoid it. It even gives a regional. So if you're in this part of the country, these foods are more high nickel. If you're in that part of the country, because the soil is different, there's a difference in the nickel content of foods. 2009 allergen of the year, mixed dialkylthioureas. This is a chemical that's only found in neoprene rubber, usually pretty easy to recognize the cause. Not always, right? So this person, it was neoprene waterproof boots. This was an optometrist who it was the little squeezy thing on the cap of the thing. So we had dermatitis just on these 3 fingers. And then this person, whether it was on the back of her right hand, this was back whenever we used to have, what the heck were they called? Not iPods. Were they iPods? They were like before your phone had music on it, so you had the little separate thing. It was like a little thing that you wore that would hold that in there while she was working out. That's what she was allergic to. Probably the most classic known things are wetsuits and orthopedic braces, right? But those are very easy to figure out because it's, from here to here on their knee from their orthopedic brace. If you go online and look for neoprene-free stuff, you can find it. So neoprene item with orthopedic braces, shoes, wetsuits, but some medical gloves. So dermaprene gloves are neoprene gloves. And so you can get a problem from non-latex gloves if you are allergic to these. My favorite gloves, I can never again remember them off the top of my head. I keep it printed out in my office. My email address is matt.zyrus@gmail.com. If you need low allergenicity gloves for your surgeon or somebody who works in healthcare, it takes me 2 seconds to send you the list of gloves. So if that's an issue, easy email address, matt.zyrus@gmail.com. 2010 allergen of the year, neomycin, right? These are we're all very familiar with neomycin. Just reminders that people don't always figure this out on their own, right? So obviously these are a couple of severe cases where they were still putting it on thinking they had an infection. We just had to have them stop using the Neosporin and those cleared up, right? That guy was triple antibiotic, she was triple antibiotic. This is another example retained in his work boots. So he hadn't used neomycin in a long time, but when he had used it, it had contaminated his work boots. He just had to get new work boots. Favorite replacement, again, I already told you this, Povidone iodine cream, which you can get on Amazon. 2011 allergen of the year, dimethyl fumarate. This one's just kind of interesting. You're never going to see it. There's not been a single case reported in the United States, but it was a mold inhibitor that they would spray inside the container ships, especially with furniture and shoes, to prevent them from getting moldy during the months whenever they got put in the container, sat there at the port for a while, got on the boat, came the whole thing. Well, people were getting horrible dermatitis from couches and shoes, but it was only happening in Europe. So there's not been a case in the US, it was just kind of a cool allergen. 2012 allergen of the year, acrylates. So primarily artificial fingernails. Right, so the big thing is here, they are in all kinds of fingernails, right? Gels, tips, wraps, solar, UV, the only kind of fake fingernail they're not in are in dip nails or powder nails. Now those, you still have to be careful because, right, what dip nails or powder nails are, they basically paint super glue on your nail, then you stick your hands in this powdered glue, which glues the powder on. Then they put on another coat of the stuff. You dip your hands in again. A lot of times, though, they will put a coat of regular acrylate. So they'll be done with all that. Then to make it real shiny, they'll put a regular coat on and put it under the UV. So that kind of ruins the whole thing if you're trying to avoid the acrylates. So you have to tell them you could go to dip nails, but they can't put a top coat on, right? That, you have to give them that full instruction. The allergy lasts about 72 hours. I have actually had women who would get their nails done. The biggest problem, like they could be conscious of not touching their face during the day, but at night, right, you kind of do this and you do that. So they would actually wear gloves for 3 days after they would get their nails done, and they were able to keep getting their nails done the way that they wanted, right? Because with powder nails or dip nails, you can't do like the long pointy ones or the stilettos or all of that kind of stuff. You can really, it's just kind of long-lasting polish. All right, so other possible exposures, though, bone cement, orthopedic surgeons in particular, but you do want to tell people if you ever have somebody who, oh, I think it might be your nails, so let's assume you're not doing comprehensive patch testing. If you get a new onset facial dermatitis in a woman, you should assume if she's getting acrylic nails that it's the nails. You ever stop doing it for 3 months, if the face clears up, you've confirmed it. If she still doesn't believe you, you can let her do them again. If her face breaks out again, then you know for sure that it's the nails, right? So, but if you ever get somebody that you're pretty sure is allergic to them, you do have to tell them if you ever need a joint replacement, they have to do it without cement, because bone cement is the same material that the fingernails are made out of. And so they can get pain or loosening of the joint. Again, they're not going to die from an allergic reaction, but the joint can be painful and can get loosened. It also can be, and I have never seen a case of this because I think they do it differently in the OR, but it used to be that the orthopedic surgeons would mix the bone cement up in their glove and it penetrates through the gloves, so then they would get a bad dermatitis on their hands from it. Haven't seen that in years. The other thing is dentures. Haven't seen a case of denture allergy in, again, 15 years. So I think that's really rare. They probably have changed how they're making the dentures somehow. Temporary crowns I do still see about once a year. So a temporary crown is made out of acrylate, but a permanent crown is not. A permanent crown is going to be made out of porcelain or something like that, so you're not going to have a problem with that. The typical thing, the way that this will show up, so first, this is a woman who was getting a periungual cuticular dystrophy that looked like dermatomyositis or scleroderma for all the world. It was just that she was allergic to the acrylates. This woman, if you look at her face, right, her right cheek is clearly swollen and very slightly pink compared to her left. This is how allergy to a temporary crown will show up. Now, the problem in her case was her dentist thought it was an infection and wouldn't take temporary crown off and put on the permanent one until I wrote him a letter saying the crown is the problem. You need to take it out. There's no infection here. Put on the permanent crown, and then she was fine. And then here's kind of a classic example of the acrylic nails. They usually don't cause a problem around the fingernails, but they usually cause it more face and neck than anything else. Other pearls here. Long-lasting nail polish. Right, so the ones where you put, it just comes in a regular bottle, you put it on, but it lasts 2 weeks. The original brand was called Shellac. Now there's a bunch of those brands. They are acrylates just like the ones that you get done in the salon. So you have to tell people you can't get fake nails and you can't use long-lasting nail polish. Right, you can use dip nails, you can use high-end regular nail polish, but if it's nail polish that's not going to chip for 2 weeks, it's got acrylates in it. Right, so they have to stay away from long-lasting nail polish, and they have to stay away from all types of acrylic nails, only dip nails or powder nails. And those are made out of the cyanoacrylate. I already talked about you got to watch for the top coat. 2013 allergen of the year, methyl isothiazolinone. We've all heard of this one. We're all pretty comfortable with it. Right, commonly used preservative was an epidemic because it was in personal care wipes. It is not in wipes. It is not in any leave-on product anymore. The only place that you find methyl isothiazolinone now are in rinse-off products. So shampoos, conditioners, hand soaps, and dish soaps are the big four for me. Dish soaps are the biggest one because people don't think about that. I will patch test them, tell you, here's your shampoo, here's your thing, your list, your app that tells you what shampoos are safe to use and blah, 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 but they won't think about their dish soap. So that is a common one for this, but it's not in personal care wipes anymore. It hasn't been in wipes in years. I will tell you with personal care wipes, my favorite brand, 7th Generation, makes a free clear wipe that is the lowest allergenicity one that I have found. There's even ones called water wipes, but I have seen allergic contact dermatitis from water wipes. I have never seen allergic contact dermatitis from the 7th generation free clear wipes. You can get them online or you can get them at Target. Now only use, like I said, rinse-off products, shampoos, soaps, hand soap, dish soaps, cleaning products and air fresheners though. So I talked yesterday about that forearm dermatitis from residual cleaning products. It can be irritant or it can be allergic, commonly from methyl isothiazolinone. Air fresheners, right? It's not like, oh, we sprayed air freshener and 9 hours later you're gonna have a problem. No, it's air freshener literally that, if you're using the restroom and you spray the air freshener, like the little cloud kind of lands on you, that's the kind of situation where air fresheners can be a problem. But then paint. So 98% of water-based paint has methyl isothiazolinone in it. Now it was released into the air up to 6 months. So let's look at what this looks like. So the first guy here, this was airborne allergic contact dermatitis from MI released in paint. So it's not like you have to be spraying the paint, like somebody can come in, paint your room. Usually you only see that small rooms that are poorly ventilated where people spend a significant amount of time. So you should be thinking, well, what kind of room would that be? It would be your bedroom, or if you're an office worker and you have an office at work. Those are the two. They're small rooms. They're generally not real well ventilated, and you spend 8 hours a day in them. MCMI in hand soap. This could have just as easily been in dish soap. And then this guy, it was MCMI in her conditioner, because your conditioner does leave a little bit of residue on your hair. And so this was her hair lying down over her neck because of the MI in her conditioner. So the pearls, up to 6 months. So if you suspect this, somebody comes in, oh my God, there's a new rash on my face, and there's like a cutoff right where their shirt starts, or their pajama top starts, or where the blankets would come up to. Oh, did you get your bedroom painted? Oh yeah, I did. Okay, you need to not sleep in your bedroom for about 6 weeks. Then you can try sleeping in it again. If you start breaking out again, stay out of it for 6 more weeks, then go back in. You just have to keep re-exposing until, because there's no way to know when the pain has stopped releasing it. Many cleaning products can be residual, so you can either tell people, go to homemade cleaning products, so things like ammonia and vinegar, where you can find all kinds of recipes online, or they can use gloves whenever they're using cleaning products, but still a common cause of eyelid and facial dermatitis from shampoos and conditioners. 2014 allergen of the year, benzophenones, very common in sunscreens and personal care products, rare allergen or photoallergen. I still, after 20 years of patch testing, have yet to see a case where I was definitely sure it was benzophenones. And the thing here is, if you suspect it, it's easy to fix, right? So you just tell people, you use sunscreens that the only active ingredient is zinc and titanium, right? So that is a really easy way. If you do suspect it, sunscreens are the only things that really have, and when I say sunscreens, moisturizers with an SPF, those kinds of things. The media stuff about this has died down, but benzophenones do kill coral. So places like Hawaii have put in laws regarding benzophenone content in sunscreens, and that is a reasonable thing to do. It clearly, in coves in particular, where there are a lot of swimmers, you can get very significant concentrations of benzophenones in the water. Now, open coral, where it's just like a beach and you swim out to it, the waves and the currents are sweeping it away. But an encircled cove, which is common at places like all-inclusive resorts, right? Because they'll tend to build those somewhere where there's a cove so that it's nice for swimming. Those are the kind of places you get the coral issues from the benzophenones, right? So where there are coves with lots of swimmers a day, I haven't seen any cases of it for sure. If you do really suspect it, because sunscreens are some of the most complicated lists of ingredients, there's a lot of stuff in there we don't have a good way to test for, you do a repeat open application test. And so a repeat open application test means you apply it twice daily, right here, and you do that, so I say here 2 weeks, 10 days is really the cutoff. You can't do it for a week, you gotta do it for 10 days, but it will show if they are allergic to anything in that sunscreen. If you're worried about photoallergy, which means that they're only allergic to benzophenone that has been exposed to UV light, then you have them do the repeat open application test, but they have to put it on, then be out in the sun for 10 minutes every day in order to figure it out. Much easier to just tell them, only use sunscreens that only have zinc and titanium as their active ingredients, right? You do it for at least a week, but it's 10 days, and the 10-day article just came out about 2 weeks ago that said that's how long you have to do it. The repeat open application test you can use for any kind of leave-on product, but it doesn't work for rinse-off. So if you're worried they're allergic to their shampoo, you can't have them wash this area twice a day for 10, it doesn't work. There's not enough residual on there. You just have to have them get away from the shampoo. But for any leave-on product, this actually works really well. Formaldehyde, right? So formaldehyde-releasing preservatives are becoming less common. So it's become much less common for me to see any of these in a personal care product, but they are still out there. I mentioned earlier about formaldehyde being released from the cotton clothes. So the fabric finishes that make them wrinkle, stain, and shrink resistant. So clothes that shrink, wrinkle, and stain are okay if they're cotton. So like old school Levi jeans were fine, right? Even though they're 100% cotton. Kind of the soft t-shirts that will shrink whenever you get them and that wrinkle like crazy if you don't put them in the dryer quick. But like my Hawaiian shirt here, 1 in 20 chance that it's releasing formaldehyde as we speak. So button-down shirts and pants tend to be in kind of dress pants. So like these wouldn't be an issue because they're a little wrinkly, but the dress pants I wear to work every day certainly could be releasing formaldehyde. Right, this guy, it was men's dress shirts. And what's kind of interesting, as you look at his picture, you see how his deltoid and upper arm, his stomach is relatively spared. It's worse from about mid-bicep down. That's because he was wearing a white t-shirt underneath his dress shirts to work every day. So he was relatively protected where the white t-shirt was, but where the white t-shirt stopped here, the rest of his arm down was significantly broken out. Next one, this was DMDM hydantoin in baby products. So they weren't getting it on the back of their hand, they were just getting it on the front because it was in the baby lotion and they were putting it in their hand, doing this, rubbing it on the baby, so it wasn't getting on the back of their hand. And then this woman was a different formaldehyde releaser, imidazole dinuurea in a lotion. Very low concentration, so it was kind of a patchy dermatitis, not every single spot where she put it on. Pearls for formaldehyde. Home cleaning products, so again, if you've got forearm dermatitis or hand dermatitis, think about residual product on surfaces. For clothing, and this is the advice that, like if I had one piece of like semi-baloney advice that patients love more than anything else, there was an article in 1974, so it was actually, I think Dr. Martin was like 50 or 60 at that point. He probably might still remember it. In 1974, where they said that non-fat powdered milk the formaldehyde that is being released and building up, the casein, casein, which is a milk protein, actually binds it and removes it. So you have people add a quarter cup of non-fat powdered milk in with the clothes before they start the laundry. Patients love that advice, right? Especially my older patients, because it sounds so like old grandma tale, right? Of like, start putting non-fat powdered milk. That sounds crazy. I've never heard that, but well, that's just because I'm so smart. That's why you've never heard it before, right? You've never seen somebody as smart as me, right? And actually, I don't know if it works or not, but patients love it. Patients love that advice. I forget that I told them. Years later, they'll be like, that rash never did come back. I'm still putting that powdered milk in. And I'll be like, oh yeah, absolutely, that was the best. I don't remember having told them to start putting the powdered milk in, but they really like it. 2016 allergen of the year, cobalt. Cobalt, basically think nickel. The only reason cobalt got named allergen of the year was somebody came up with that dimethylglyaxine spot test I showed you the picture of. Somebody came up with one for nickel. I think they have sold a total of 2 bottles of it since 2016 because just nobody cares about about cobalt allergy, but just theoretic. So these were cases of nickel allergy because I don't have any pictures of any cobalt allergy. But these would be the kinds of things, right back whenever the cell phones used to have those little squares like in the middle that we'd use to move the cursor around. She was allergic to that little square thing, which was just kind of cool. All right, cobalt pearls. The big thing here is if you do get somebody allergic to cobalt, they may end up asking you about B12 because cyanocobalamin has cobalt in it. It is conceivable that you could get a stomatitis from the B12 drops that you put under your tongue, or that you could get kind of a generalized dermatitis from taking B12 orally or B12 injections. I have never seen a case of either of these things, but just something you should have in the back of your mind in case a patient ever asks you. I really would say, well, do you have a rash all over? If the answer is no, then you're fine. If they're saying, is it okay for me to start doing that? My answer is yes, it's okay for you to start. Probably a 1 in 100 chance you're going to get a rash. If you start to get the rash, stop doing it and the rash will go back away. Can have a generalized, and then there's a low cobalt diet as well. I really have never used a low cobalt diet. I'm not convinced I've ever seen a case of that, but I see the dietary nickel rashes all the time. 2017 allergen of the year, alkyl glucosides. So these are the next kind of surfactant or lathering agent. They are very mild, they're very biodegradable, and they're plant-derived. So all of the companies making like clean products and this product and that, and it's so wonderful and it's so good for the environment, they're very likely to have glucosides in them, and they are generally really nice ingredients unless you're allergic to them. So they're primarily used in cleansers, but I occasionally will see them in a lotion or a sunscreen as well. They're not on the true test, they're only on really, really comprehensive patch testing. Relatively rare allergen. Again, the VMV hypoallergenics, the Vanicream line, the CeraVe line tend to be very good in terms of the glucosides as well, but steadily increasing in use. This is the best picture I have of one. There was a glucoside in her facial cleanser, and so she was getting this patchy facial dermatitis. Pearls here, there are a lot of different glucosides. If somebody's allergic to one glucoside, they need to avoid them all because they might cross-react. So if you're allergic, you should avoid all glucosides. Can be in a household cleaning product, so this also falls into that category that I talked about with methylacetylazolonone and formaldehyde. If you get forearm dermatitis or hand dermatitis, and it's not getting better with avoidance. 2018 allergen of the year, propylene glycol, extremely common in topical prescription products. It's in the vast majority of topical steroids. It's in the new Opzelura that was the topical JAK inhibitor. I haven't looked yet if it's in the VTAMA, but it probably is. So it's in most topical prescription products because it makes them spread better, it makes the active ingredient get absorbed better, and it makes them feel nicer on your skin. So they are added to the vast majority of topical prescription products, steroids, non-steroids, creams, ointments, whatever. There's a website called FDA Daily Med, which has the package insert for every single branded and generic product that is approved for use in the United States. So you can go on there and look up triamcinolone cream and find, oh, the triamcinolone cream from Forest Labs doesn't have any propylene glycol in it. Right now, how often do I actually do that? Pretty rarely, because if I'm suspecting propylene glycol allergy, I'll usually go to triamcinolone ointment, or I will have people mix clobetasol into CeraVe, which is still my favorite thing of all time, right? So you get a 50 ml bottle of clobetasol scalp solution, you have the patient pour the whole bottle into a jar of CeraVe, can be anywhere from 12 to 19 ounces. By diluting the clobetasol that way, you turn it into about a class 3 or 4 steroid, and there's no vehicle allergens in there. Patients actually really love it because it goes on and spreads really well. There's also some evidence that the ceramides help to prevent some of the barrier impairment that steroids cause. And so that is a really nice trick to do instead of, say, triamcinolone cream. So they're getting a nice big container. A 50 ml bottle of clobetasol scalp solution costs about $18, and so it's not really expensive to do that either. Right, but it's common in moisturizers. I believe Cetaphil and Vanicream have just taken propylene glycol out, but don't quote me on that. Check, if you recommend Cetaphil or Vanicream, check to see if they've taken the propylene glycol out before you continue recommending them. And that can cause systemic contact dermatitis from lotion-like foods. Lotion-like foods are things like icing, sauces, salad dressings, things that if you stop and think about it, oh yeah, that has about the consistency of a lotion, that can have propylene glycol in it. So here's some examples. This was propylene glycol in a Pimecrolimus cream. This guy was propylene glycol. It was Cetaphil Gentle Facial Cleanser. Again, I think they've taken it out since then. This was in those kind of liquidy EKG leads. Again, somebody like this will sometimes ask, like, well, how do I get an EKG again? I can't, you know what, you're gonna put up with the rash. If you need to get an EKG again, right, it's these little spots. They're gonna be on there for 5 minutes. It's not gonna drive you nuts. Again, this is not allergy like a drug allergy or a peanut allergy where somebody could die. It really is pretty straightforward. So the propylene glycol pearls, foods, it would always be listed as an ingredient. It's if you go to a restaurant, you can ask, do you make your salad dressing from scratch? And if they make their salad dressing in-house, very unlikely it's gonna have propylene glycol in it, but salad dressings that is pre-packaged commonly has propylene glycol in it. And Propylene glycol is not related to, it does not cross-react with polyethylene glycol. So I cannot tell you how many of my patients called me asking for a waiver for their employer to not have to get the COVID vaccine because they were allergic to polyethylene glycol that was in there. And no, you're allergic to propylene glycol, conclusively proven. There's no relationship between the two. I would be quite happy to write you a letter, but all I could say in the letter was, this person doesn't want to have the COVID vaccine. There is no medical reason to not give it to them, right? That would have to be the letter that I could write them because that would be being true, right? But it also doesn't cross-react with, you'll see hexylene glycol, butylene glycol. There's a number of different glycols. It's the propylene part, not the glycol. So propylene glycol is the only one that they need to avoid. 2019 non-allergen of the year, parabens. Right, parabens were chosen to emphasize their safety and infrequency as a cause of contact dermatitis. Paraben-free is actually, like for me, when I'm walking and it's paraben-free, I'm like, oh, they must not want me to buy that. Because I prefer products with parabens. Because the things that they replace the parabens with, because you have to put preservatives in. You cannot make a water-based product without a preservative. Whatever they're putting in instead of the parabens, I either know for sure that it's worse, or I know that we have almost no data about it, and that it might be a contact allergen, there might be any number of things wrong with it. I want products with parabens. Paraben-free is a bad thing. Now, the two reasons that companies like paraben-free, theoretically the contact derm, but it's more about people worry about endocrine disruption and breast cancer risk, because parabens have some estrogenic activity, that has been totally debunked. Right, so if you took a lotion that was half paraben, 50% concentration, smeared it all over your body twice a day for a year, yeah, I guess I could imagine that you would get like some effect from that amount of paraben, but paraben in your shampoo or your conditioner, no. There's just absolutely no chance of having any kind of a problem from it, and you're getting the safest, most effective preservative that we have proof about, right? So like methyl isothiazolinone, why that became a big issue in an epidemic was because they were trying to go paraben-free. And they thought that it would be safer, and they just didn't know, but thought it would be. No, much, much worse. So, like I said, I could imagine it if they were putting on enough paraben, but you just don't see allergen to paraben. It is incredibly rare. And then the 2020 allergen of the year, isobornyl acrylate. If we could go back, we would probably not have it be the allergen of the year. And so the reason it was allergen of the year, it was used in a bunch of diabetic devices. So the wearable insulin pumps and the wearable glucose sensors. And so there was like this epidemic that it started to happen, and somebody isolated isobornyl acrylate from the devices that were causing it. And so then they said, okay, oh my God, this is so cool, a totally new allergen, this is great. And so the companies started replacing the isobornyl acrylate with other things, and now there are like 14 things that are known to be the allergens causing it. So initially we thought it was just the isobornyl acrylate. It is not. There are lots of different allergens in these wearable diabetic devices. The Freestyle Libre seem to cause the most cases. I think it's been taken out of that already, but there are numerous other things that have now been shown to be the issue. This is what the reaction looks like. So nobody, you looked at that, you knew they were allergic to some component of the device, but we thought that it was just isobornyl acrylate. It's a bunch of different things. But the pearl here, if you get somebody who comes in with an allergic contact dermatitis that is clearly from a wearable device like that, number one, you can try barriers. So you can try putting on something like Tegaderm, which is a very thin barrier. You could try something thicker like Duoderm. It may affect how the device works, though, so that can be a little bit difficult. You could try that. You could try it pre-treating with a steroid solution. So putting a couple drops of clobetasol solution on there first, let it dry for 10 minutes, then put the device on, or they can switch devices. But there's no good advice to give them. It truly is just trial and error, because none of the devices are conclusively allergen-free. So it's telling them switch devices, don't go through the whole rigmarole of like getting new, because I've had a stepdaughter who was type 1 diabetic. It is like a huge hassle to try and get the insurance to cover the thing. Then once they cover it, you got to calibrate it and all of this. So you have them try them for like a week at a time to make sure that they don't get a reaction to it before you have them make the long-term switch. The last two allergens, there have been 2 new allergens that have come out since then. So this is 2022 now. One, aminoazidophenone, which is an allergen in plastic shin guards. So soccer shin guard dermatitis, usually irritant contact dermatitis, but it can be this acetophenonazine. The easiest way that you figure this out, if you get somebody you're worried about soccer shin allergy, so rather than irritancy, you take some little shavings off of the shin guard and you tape it to them for 2 days, leave it on for 2 days, take it off, wait a couple more days, and see if they react to it. That's also, with foot dermatitis, Crocs are the biggest cause by far. Again, the way that you diagnose that, oh, do you wear Crocs? Yeah, I wear Crocs. Take some shavings of the Crocs, basically like a shave biopsy that's about a 1 inch by 1 inch square, tape it to them for a couple of days. It will come up strongly positive if they're allergic to the Crocs. And then this year's allergen of the year was aluminum. Just everything I said about thimerosal applies to aluminum as well. Only an allergen relevant to vaccines, occasionally to antiperspirants, but I've seen a total of two cases in 20 years. So it's not something where I want you going out there thinking like, oh my God, there's all these people allergic to the aluminum in their antiperspirant. Much more of an issue with vaccines, but they can still get the vaccines. The aluminum is added as an adjuvant in order to stimulate the immune response. If they're allergic to aluminum, it's just going to make it work even better to help stimulate the immune response to the vaccine. That's it. I actually finished 3 minutes early. That's rare for me. And so, George, if we've got questions, let's go at it.
We sure do. Thank you, Matt. So I want to remind everyone that Hillary Baldwin, our all-star in Broadmoor F, is holding a refreshments and poo-poo thing, and she's going to do a talk for about a half hour on Araslo, and you're going to want to learn about that molecule and that preparation. But Matt, let's take a couple minutes and answer some questions as people move over. Lots of patients seem to be sensitive to adhesives and medical tape and bandages. What chemicals are typically the cause? Do you have a go-to medical tape?
Oh my God, I love this question. So, essentially nobody is allergic to medical tape. It is almost completely non-existent. Now, in the general population, about 1 in 1,000 people will get a horrible dermatitis under medical tape. So the correct term for this is non-allergic tape reaction. What it is thought to be is that normally the tape is going over a skin injury, right? So they've had a cut and it's a Band-Aid, they've had a scrape and it's a Band-Aid, it's had an IV placed and it's over there. And so inflammatory cytokines are usually transudating. One of the ways they're getting out of your skin is by coming out through the surface, whether in your sweat or just diffusing. The tape actually holds them in. And so and the reason we know these things are not allergic, I have taken dozens of these people and they've been like, okay, here's my, oh yeah, that looks like contact dermatitis. Here's the tape that I put on that caused it. Okay, let's put that tape on you over here without a needle stick, can never reproduce it, right? So now what you do for these people, you have two options. One, there's a tape called Kind Release. And so it is a silicone-based tape. And so it doesn't stick very tight, but it doesn't lose its stickiness. So you stick it on and it kind of stays on, but it's loose enough that it doesn't occlude the stuff. If you need to use like regular tape, my biggest advice, they should cut it into a relatively thin strip, so maybe about a ½ centimeter wide, and you leave just a tiny little gap. So instead of one piece of tape, you put 3 kind of thin strips, and that way it gives gaps where those things can dissipate through. So those are the ways that I try and deal with that. Paper tape usually is less of an issue because it's not as sticky and it's not as occlusive. It's a little bit more breathable, but if you need like a strong tape, usually strips of thin tape will work. If you don't need a strong tape, that Kind removal, but if you just Google silicone tape, there are a number of silicone tapes out there.
Yeah, we'll do is we'll use Telfa and Coban because a lot of the older people we do surgery on, you take the tape off, you take ½ pound of skin off, and they don't appreciate that. I've done that. And then, Matt, on benzophenone and the Reef Carl Safe thing, we're battling that in Hawaii. Unfortunately, we lost some legislature. I think Kirk Cole's going to talk about it. The National Academy of Science monograph on impact is the ad hoc committee on sunscreens. That monograph has been written on the impact of sunscreens on the aquatic environment from ponds to the ocean, and also what happens if you take those sunscreens away. Dirk Elston was on that committee. He and I corresponded. It's been written, sent outside for external review. I talked to one of the reviewers. They've reviewed it. So in the next month or two, we're going to know what's safe for reefs and corals and ponds and not. And the original studies with benzophenone were done with 1,000 times the concentration found at the highest concentration, Hanama Beach, after a busy day. That test was done in a tank at 1,000 times the concentration of benzophenone found in that particular bay and published, and has since been debunked. And since then, and it's a very complex layered thing between the sediment, the top sediment, the water, the circulation stuff. So anyway, the science behind it is rather mind-blowing with a lot of modeling, so it's a lot of mathematics.
One other thing I got to add to that that's just cool, because if you think, well, I'll put it on, I just won't go in the ocean, remember, all the sunscreen you put on, you're eventually going to get in the shower, it's going to go down the drain, and the water treatment facilities are not removing benzophenones. It's just going right out into the streams and the lakes. Again,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. Will acrylic long-lasting nail polish cause nails to split and peel?
Generally, no. I don't see a problem from that.
What have you found to cause most cases of eyelid dermatitis?
By far the most common things, isothiazolinones, betaines, and fragrances, always from shampoos and conditioners. So the first thing that I do, so the two things I do with eyelid dermatitis, I'll get them to switch to a low allergenicity shampoo. If they desperately don't want to try empirically switching, most of them I can get them a lot better by having them wash their face with a low allergenicity cleanser, so something like Cetaphil Daily, Gentle Daily Cleanser, the CeraVe Hydrating Cleanser. Wash their face immediately after they have rinsed out their shampoo and conditioner, and really focus on washing the eyelids and rinsing the eyelids well.
Do you find the same effect with white gold?
Yes, doesn't matter what color the gold is, white, yellow, rose, whatever.
And recommended resources, so start patch testing in my clinic, come to your workshop.
So no, there's actually something better now and cheaper and easier. It's called the Contact Dermatitis Institute. So a dermatologist named Dathan Heyman, who was one of my residents, his family actually owned the True Test. They don't anymore. He is just so passionate about contact dermatitis. He has put together this, it's about 10 hours of videos that my patch test nurse has been my patch test nurse for 10 years. I made her watch the videos because he really has done such a good job that she actually learned stuff from his videos, and he goes through patch application, how to educate the whole thing. Contact Dermatitis Institute.
So, Matt, that was awesome.